Hey everyone, I'm Tony Leonardi, your CFP professional from Newtown, Connecticut. Welcome back to a smarter way to retire, because there really is a smarter way to retire. And Happy New Year, everyone. It's January 2nd, 2026, and a lot has happened since the last time we were together. On Christmas Eve, my sister hosted for the traditional Christmas Eve dinner, La Cena della Vigilia di Natale, as we say in Italian, or the Feast of the Seven Fishes. It's interesting, I actually did some research on this for today's episode, because I wasn't totally familiar with the history of this Italian tradition. It's actually relatively new, I found out, with the earliest known print reference to the Feast of the Seven Fishes appearing in a U.S. newspaper in 1983. It draws from a broader Roman Catholic practice of abstaining from meat and dairy on vigils or feast days. Why seven fishes? No one really knows. Common theories tie the number to Catholic symbolism, such as the seven sacraments of the Church, or the 7 days of creation in the Bible. Other interpretations link it to the 7 hills of Rome, which is the theory that my family subscribes to, or even the biblical reference to the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. They do have similar types of vigil meals in Italy, especially in southern regions like Calabria, Sicily, and Naples, where there's a lot of fish. But this tradition, the Feast of the Seven Fishes, is mostly an Italian-American tradition, as it turns out. Either way, I love it. It's probably my favorite meal and my favorite night of the year. And thank you, Adrienne, for being such a great hostess. Christmas Day, Lori and I hosted at our house for what turned out to be 18 people. We had ravioli, 13 dozen, and about 12 pounds of beef tenderloin, which was amazing, and all the vegetables and potatoes to accompany the beef. And of course, following Murphy's Law, if something could go wrong, it will. We lost what we thought was heat and hot water right in the middle of dinner. The oil company had to come out and replace an electronic controller. We felt so bad for the technicians who had to work on Christmas that we sent them home with their own Christmas meals, ravioli and tenderloin to go. So I'll fill you in on our New Year's Eve celebrations next week, as I'm actually recording this episode on December 29th. So for 2026, we're kicking off the year with a fresh start. Last week we looked at 2025, a year in review. We looked back at the wins, prizes, and a peek ahead to the new year. Today, as we start a new year, I thought it would be appropriate to start the year at the end. Well, at the end of the financial evaluation process, that is. We're going to do a deep dive into Monte Carlo simulations and your probability of success number. This is, as far as I'm concerned, the single most important metric in retirement planning, and most people have either never heard of it or understand what it really means. When we do a financial evaluation for you, we gather a lot of data, which we'll talk about in a minute, with the ultimate intent of getting to the point where we can measure the likelihood that you'll be able to live out a successful retirement according to your terms, meaning that you'll be able to pay off all your bills, take those trips that you'd love to take, maybe buy that vacation home, pay for some or all of your grandkids' education, help your kids buy a house, or pay for daycare, whatever it is that you want to accomplish. What are the odds that you'll be able to pull it off without running out of money? That's Monte Carlo. So by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly what Monte Carlo is, why volatility is the make or break factor, and how to use it to make smarter decisions that can add years to your retirement plan's lifespan. So let's jump into it. Let me tell you about a client of mine. We'll call her Karen, age 62. She did a great job of saving $1.2 million in her portfolio, and she's getting ready to retire next year. She came into my office for the first time very confident and said, "Tony, I think I've got enough money. I've run the numbers online and everything looks good." I said, "Okay, let's just test that." We built her full financial model and ran her Monte Carlo simulation. Her probability of success, only 58%. That means 42% of the over 1,000 market scenarios that we tested, she runs out of money before age 95, which is her stated life expectancy. Karen's jaw dropped. She said, but my average return is 6% on my investments. That should be fine. That's the trap that most people fall into. It's not the average return that matters most in retirement. It's the sequence of those returns, or when you get those returns, when you get the volatility, especially in the early years, the first 5 to 10 years. You see, before we had the capability to run Monte Carlo scenarios modeling volatility, financial planners and clients would run what we call a straight line retirement plan using average returns over time. Something like, if I earn 6% and I withdraw 3%, that leaves 3% for inflation, I should be fine. The problem is the real world doesn't work in a straight line. The real world is messy. The real world has volatility. One bad market early on in your retirement and your plan could fail. The same bad market 20 years later, barely a blip in terms of your probability of success. That's Monte Carlo in action, and it's why it's at the end of the evaluation process, and it tells us where you really stand. So what is Monte Carlo really? Well, think of Monte Carlo as a crystal ball for your retirement, but one that's based on math, not magic. It's a simulation tool that runs thousands of possible future market scenarios based on historical data and your exact plan. This is very customized for you. Here's what goes into it: your current assets, your portfolio, how it's structured, your asset allocation, your portfolio value, your income sources, Social Security, pensions, part-time work, your expenses. This is the big one. How much will you be pulling from your investments each year to pay your bills? You should be pretty accurate and confident with that expense number. Inflation assumptions, usually 2.5%, 3.5%. Tax rates, current tax rates, expected future tax rates, IRMA thresholds, and life expectancy, yours and your spouse's. But the star of the show is your current portfolio's standard deviation. It's a fancy way to say, how much does it bounce around? Every portfolio has a measurable standard deviation based historically on how much each of those assets that you own bounce around. Each stock that you own has a measurable standard deviation. Each mutual fund, every index, every portfolio has a measurable standard deviation. Standard deviation measures volatility. Let's say a conservative portfolio, heavily weighted in bonds, fixed income, might have a 6 to 8% standard deviation, which means low bounces. An aggressive portfolio, heavily weighted in stocks, might have a 15 to 20% or more standard deviation, which means big swings in volatility. Monte Carlo takes that standard deviation and says, what if the big down year hits early in your retirement, year 1, year 2, year 5? What if it hits later on in retirement, year 20 or year 25? Or anywhere in between? It runs all of those what if scenarios and calculates your specific probability of success, the percentage chance that your money lasts as long as you do. If it comes back at 95%, you're probably in great shape. 80 to 94%, pretty solid, but there's room for some improvement. Below 80%, time to make some changes. So here's the part that most people miss. Volatility in investing is your friend while you're saving. Remember, dollar cost averaging we talked about in the past allows you to buy more shares when the prices are low, driving down your average share price over time. This is what people are doing in their 401k. Many of them don't even realize it, and it's fantastic. But in retirement, volatility becomes your enemy, especially early on in retirement. We call that sequence of returns risk. Remember, we talked about this just a few weeks ago. The same average return, let's say 6% over 30 years. But if the bad years hit early, you could be in big trouble. you could be toast. Here's a real example. $1 million portfolio, 4% withdrawal rate, $40,000 a year. Adjust that for inflation, so it goes up every year. Scenario 1, bad markets in the first 5 years. Money runs out at age 82. Scenario 2, same portfolio, same expenses, same variables, but the bad markets hit in the last 5 years of retirement. The money lasts to age 95 or beyond. That's a difference of 13 years of worry-free retirement, not running out of money. And that's with the market eventually recovering. Why does this happen? Early withdrawals in a down market force you to sell more shares at lower prices. Those shares are gone forever and can't recover. So what happens is you get into what I call a snowball situation. You just don't have the shares to recover when the market bounces back. So what do you do if you find yourself below 80% probability of success on your initial financial plan? Well, there are a few things that you can do. There are a few levers that you can pull. You can retire later if you haven't already retired. You can die earlier, not a great option. You can spend less, take fewer vacations. Don't fund college for your grandkids. These are the obvious lifestyle choices that you can make. But from a planning perspective, what can we do to improve your odds short of changing your lifestyle? Here are the exact strategies that we use to help boost our clients' probability of success from maybe to solid. One, build a 1 to 3 year cash buffer, which will cover your expenses in the early years if you happen to hit volatility early on. If you retire next year and the market drops 20%, you have cash to pay your expenses. You don't need to sell shares to pay your expenses. It's that bucket strategy that we talked about in prior episodes. You can use flexible spending guardrails or cut discretionary spending in the bad years and then take extra spending in the good years. So make adjustments to spending, to vacations, timing of big trips, etc. You can diversify your income sources, Social Security, pension if you're lucky enough to have it. And yeah, annuities might be an answer to cover some of those needs or must-have expenses. For fixed income to cover fixed expenses, variable income to cover variable expenses. You can shift your allocation. This may be counterintuitive, but if you have more bonds early on to weather early volatility, then add risk or stocks later on. So be dynamic in your asset allocation, not static. Your investment strategy should be dynamic. And stress test your portfolio, your plan annually. Run Monte Carlo every year and adjust as needed. My clients can monitor their Monte Carlo probability of success anytime they want. Can't sleep at 3 a.m.? Worried about the markets? Pull up your financial website and review your probability of success. If you have a good plan, you'll go right back to sleep, like a baby. In fact, I often refer my clients back to their Monte Carlo numbers to help keep them on track. The 24/7 news cycle can really get people wound up and overly concerned. Your Monte Carlo meter can be that dose of reality that you need from time to time, bring you down to earth. I've had lots of couples that I've worked with over the years who've jumped from the 50 to 60% range up to the 80 to 90% range probability of success with smart planning. One in mine just recently went from 62% to 94% with a few smart tweaks of their plan. So here's your action plan. If you're within 5 years of retirement or you've recently retired, run your own Monte Carlo. Don't guess at it. There are lots of free Monte Carlo calculators out there online, but I would say be careful with them. I've had people come in to see me with some of these free calculators showing them at 90+% probability of success, but when we run their comprehensive model, their numbers often are quite a bit lower. Remember the old rule, you get what you pay for. You can use a free model as a starting point to get a feel for where you are, but I wouldn't risk my retirement on free models. A reliable look at your probability of success, there are 2 easy ways to get started. You can take my free retirement readiness quiz, and you'll get a score and a complimentary copy of my ebook right away. And that can be found at leonardifamilywealthcare.com/quiz. Or simply book a complimentary 15-minute call with me. I'll help you run your Monte Carlo probability of success meter with your real numbers so we know where you stand. You can find my calendar at leonardifamilywealthcare.com. Look for my contact and Calendly tabs. So remember, there is a smarter way to retire. Thanks for listening. Plan smarter, retire happier, and we'll see you next week. And Happy New Year.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth. The opinions expressed herein are for general information only and is not necessarily the opinions of Osaic Wealth or its representatives. Investing is subject to risk, including loss of principal invested. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. No strategy can assure a profit nor protect against loss. It is not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Please consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation.